Every level of sleep deprivation explained. There's a level of sleep deprivation where your eyes are open, you're talking, you're walking around, and you are, by every scientific definition, asleep. It's called a microsleep, and you won't remember it happening. Some people have driven entire highways this way. Some never woke up. This is the part of sleep deprivation nobody warns you about, and it starts earlier than you think. Level 1, the 24-hour mark. You've been awake for a full day now. No big deal, right? You've done this before. Finals week, a red-eye flight, a newborn at home. Your body disagrees. At 24 hours awake, your reaction time and coordination match someone with a blood alcohol level of 0.10. That's over the legal driving limit in every U.S. state. You wouldn't hand someone car keys in that condition. But right now, you're driving exactly that impaired, and nobody pulled you over because there's no breathalyzer for exhaustion. The CDC estimates drowsy driving causes roughly 100,000 police-reported crashes every year in the U.S. alone. And researchers think that number is a massive undercount, because there's no roadside test that flags exhaustion the way there's one for alcohol. You can feel it in smaller ways too, long before a car is involved. You reread the same paragraph of an email 4 times and still can't tell anyone what it said. You walk into a room and forget why. Your mood goes first. Small annoyances feel enormous. A slow walker on the sidewalk suddenly feels like a personal attack. You send a text to a friend that's sharper than you meant it to be, and you won't notice the edge in it until tomorrow. Your judgment slips too. You start making decisions you'd never make rested, and you're too tired to notice you're making them. This is level 1. This is the part everyone's experienced. The next levels, most people never reach, and most people shouldn't. Level 2, 36 hours, the hormones turn. A day and a half without sleep, and your body stops treating this as an inconvenience. It starts treating it as an emergency. Cortisol floods your system, the same stress hormone your body releases when you're being chased. Except nothing's chasing you. You're just standing in your kitchen at 4 a.m., and your heart rate is elevated, like you're running from something. Your hunger hormones flip too. Ghrelin spikes, leptin drops, the exact hormonal signature of someone who hasn't eaten in days, even though you just had lunch. This is why an exhausted brain craves sugar and carbs in the middle of a night. It's not weakness, it's biochemistry hijacking you. Your immune system is already responding. Inflammatory markers rise the same way they would if you'd caught a virus, because as far as your body's concerned, you basically have. And somewhere in here, the first microsleeps arrive. A few seconds where your brain just switches off mid-task. Eyes open, no memory of it happening. You're sitting at your desk, and suddenly the clock says 4 minutes have passed that you cannot account for. You'll just feel a small gap in time, like a skip in a song. Level 3, 48 hours, automatic behavior. 2 full days now. This is where your brain stops asking for permission. It's called automatic behavior, and it's one of the strangest documented effects of extended wakefulness. Your body keeps moving, talking, even responding to questions, while the part of your brain responsible for conscious thought has effectively logged off. Long-haul truck drivers, studied in sleep labs, have been recorded steering through entire stretches of highway they have zero memory of afterward. Factory workers in fatigue studies have kept performing repetitive assembly tasks correctly for minutes at a time, with no memory of doing it. Your immune system takes a direct hit here too. Natural killer cell activity, the cells responsible for fighting off viruses and abnormal cells, drops by close to 70%. For 48 hours, your body is functionally undefended against things it would normally handle without you ever knowing. Nurses and resident physicians working back-to-back overnight shifts have reported the exact same automatic behavior episodes, charting vitals or drawing blood with zero memory of having done it, which is part of why hospital systems have spent the last decade arguing over shift length caps. Your vision starts lying to you. Not full hallucinations yet, just distortions. Shadows seem to crawl at the edge of your sight. Text on a page seems to shift and rearrange itself when you're not looking directly at it. Your brain is starting to fill gaps with guesses instead of actual signal, and it won't tell you which is which.
Level 4. 72 hours. The hallucinations begin. 3 days. This is where most people who attempt this break, and where doctors say you should have stopped a long time ago. The hallucinations are no longer subtle. People in documented sleep studies have reported seeing animals that aren't there, hearing their name called out in empty rooms, feeling things crawling on their skin that don't exist. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic and impulse control, is now operating at a fraction of normal activity, measurable on brain scans. It's the same region affected in certain psychiatric conditions, which is part of why extreme sleep deprivation has actually been used in research as a temporary model for studying psychosis. Military researchers documented something similar in soldiers on extended combat deployments decades ago. Hallucinations strikingly close to what shows up in sleep labs, which is part of why modern militaries treat sleep discipline as a tactical priority and not a comfort issue. Paranoia sets in alongside the hallucinations. People at 72 hours have reported genuine, overwhelming fear that the people around them are conspiring against them. Friends, doctors, even family. Your brain isn't choosing to think this. It no longer has the machinery left to stop itself from thinking it. Quick myths before we go further. Myth 1. You can train your body to need less sleep. Mostly false. A tiny fraction of people, under 1%, carry a genetic mutation that lets them function on significantly less sleep without the same breakdown. Everyone else who thinks they've adapted to 5 hours a night hasn't adapted at all. They're just impaired and too used to the feeling to notice anymore. Myth 2. Caffeine cancels out sleep deprivation. False. Caffeine blocks the chemical signal that makes you feel tired, but it does nothing to reverse the actual cognitive damage underneath. Your reaction time and decision-making stay impaired even when you don't feel sleepy, which arguably makes it more dangerous, not less. Myth 3. You can fully catch up on lost sleep over a weekend. Partially true, but only partially. Some recovery happens fast, but researchers have found measurable cognitive deficits lingering for days after a period of sleep debt, even once you start sleeping normally again. And the cumulative health risk doesn't fully reset just because you slept in on Saturday. Myth 4. If you function fine on 5 or 6 hours for years, you're just one of the lucky ones who needs less. Possibly, but unlikely. Sleep researchers say most people who believe this have never actually tested it, because adding even 1 extra hour for a week almost always reveals a level of fog they'd simply stopped noticing was there. Level 5. 96 hours and beyond. The edge of psychosis. 4 days and beyond, and the line between sleep deprivation and a full psychiatric crisis gets genuinely blurry. Time perception breaks down completely. People lose track of whether minutes or hours have passed, sometimes insisting it's a different day entirely. Speech becomes disorganized. Sentences trail off mid-thought or loop back on themselves. Some people develop full delusions, fixed false beliefs they cannot be talked out of, even when shown direct evidence they're wrong. This is also the point where extended sleep deprivation has, in documented military and research settings, triggered episodes nearly indistinguishable from acute psychiatric breaks. In people with an existing vulnerability, researchers have found it can trigger an episode that doesn't fully reverse just because they finally sleep. The body and mind have been pushed somewhere they don't always come all the way back from on their own.
Level 6. 11 days, the record. In December 1964, a 17-year-old named Randy Gardner stayed awake for 264 consecutive hours, just over 11 days, as a high school science project in San Diego. Word got around, and a Stanford sleep researcher ended up monitoring him for the final stretch, turning a kid's experiment into one of the most cited sleep studies in history. By day 2, his eyes already felt raw, and his coordination had started to slip. By day 4, he was hallucinating, mistaking a street sign for a person. By day 5, his moods swung from giddy to flat within minutes of each other. By day 7, his speech was slurred, and his short-term memory was failing him mid-sentence. By day 9, his speech had flattened into something almost robotic, and researchers began running cognitive tests every few hours just to track how fast he was declining. By day 11, he couldn't subtract 7 from 100 more than a couple of times before losing track entirely. He survived. He slept for nearly 15 hours straight afterward, and as far as long-term follow-up could tell, suffered no permanent damage. But researchers who study his case are clear about one thing: nobody recommends trying to repeat it, and there's no guarantee anyone else's brain would handle it the same way his did. He got lucky. Animal studies on total sleep deprivation have shown far darker outcomes, including death after sustained periods without any sleep at all. Level 7. The slow version, chronic sleep debt. Here's the level almost nobody thinks of as sleep deprivation, because it doesn't happen in one dramatic stretch. It happens over years. Picture an ordinary version of this. Alarm at 6:15. You hit snooze twice, which you do most mornings, and you're out the door without really waking up until the second cup of coffee. You get through the day on momentum. Meetings, errands, dinner, a show before bed that runs an episode too long, because the only quiet time you get is after everyone else is asleep, and you're not ready to give that up yet. Lights off around 12:30, later if something good is on. Alarm again at 6:15. Repeat, for years, weekday after weekday, and it never once feels like a crisis, because nothing dramatic ever happens on any single one of those individual nights. That's exactly what makes it the most dangerous level on this list. Getting 6 hours of sleep instead of 7 or 8 every single night for a decade doesn't feel like an emergency. It feels like a Tuesday. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine recommends at least 7 hours a night for adults, and roughly a third of American adults regularly fall short of that. But the research on chronic short sleep is consistent and unflattering. It's linked to a significantly higher risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and impaired immune function. One large long-term study found that adults who regularly slept under 6 hours a night had a meaningfully higher risk of early death compared to those consistently getting 7 to 8. This is the version of sleep deprivation most people are actually living through right now, reading this. Not 11 days awake in a lab, just years of quietly borrowing against a debt that compounds in the background while you call yourself fine.
Level 8. Fatal familial insomnia.
There's one more level, and it isn't something you do to yourself. It's something that in extraordinarily rare cases happens to a small number of families worldwide carrying a specific genetic mutation. Fatal familial insomnia is a prion disease, the same category of illness as mad cow disease, that progressively destroys the thalamus,
the part of the brain responsible for regulating sleep. It usually begins in mid-adulthood, with mild insomnia that slowly worsens over weeks. Within months, patients lose the ability to sleep at all, not occasionally, completely. Hallucinations follow, then panic attacks, then rapid and unexplained weight loss as the body's regulatory systems collapse one by one. There is no cure and no treatment that meaningfully slows it down. The disease is fatal, typically within 12 to 18 months of the first noticeable symptoms. It affects only a handful of families on Earth, first identified through generations of one Italian family whose documented history with the illness stretches back centuries, long before anyone understood what was killing them. Diagnosing it early is brutally difficult because the first symptom is just insomnia, something millions of people already have for entirely ordinary reasons. Most families carrying the mutation don't find out until they've already watched it happen to a parent or a sibling, which means by the time it's confirmed, they already know roughly what's coming for them, too. But it exists as the most extreme possible endpoint of what every level before it was building toward. A brain that has completely and permanently lost the ability to do the one thing every other system in your body depends on it doing. You will experience microsleep, eyes open, body moving, completely unaware you'd already crossed over. That's not level 8. That's not even level 2. Some people hit that exact point in a single all-nighter, behind the wheel, on an ordinary drive home, on a road they've driven 100 times before. You don't need 11 days or a rare genetic mutation to find out what sleep deprivation actually does to you. For most people, it starts showing up faster than they think, and it's already happening, quietly, to a lot of people who would never think to call themselves sleep-deprived. Most people watching this have already brushed against level 2 or 3 this month without fully realizing it. The dangerous levels don't always announce themselves with a number. Sometimes they just look like an ordinary Tuesday you pushed through anyway. They'd just call themselves busy.